Hello, and welcome to Guys Dealings with Feelings, the podcast dedicated to addressing men's mental health issues and providing practical solutions. My journey has been profoundly shaped by the tragic loss of my son, and through this experience, I've gained valuable insights. I'm here to share what I've learned and continue to discover along the way. If you find this podcast helpful, please like, share, subscribe, and follow us wherever you're listening. Following us and your 5-star rating can make a significant difference in spreading our message and potentially changing someone's life. You can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts under Guys Dealings with Feelings, and on YouTube and Instagram at I2U Thrive. That's I, the number 2, the letter U, and the word thrive. I'm so happy and grateful to have Alan Lazaros on with me today. Alan is a CEO, podcaster, and business coach. He has a computer engineering degree and an MBA. Alan has suffered severe traumatic events, losing his father at a young age to a car accident, and then he himself nearly lost his life in a car accident. After realizing success was about more than just making money, Alan made some shifts in his life, and he now focuses on helping businesses and people take themselves to the next level. I'm looking forward to getting to know Alan a little bit better and understanding how he helps people become high performers. Alan, thanks so much for being here today, brother.
Aaron, thank you for having me. I started listening to podcasts 9 years ago after that car accident that you mentioned in the bio, and they really helped me reorient my life in a more positive direction. So it's an honor, it's a dream come true, and I don't say that lightly because anytime you have someone's attention, you have the opportunity to change their trajectory forever.
Amen, man. I believe that 100%. That's why I'm trying to do what I'm out here trying to do, and just, really open people's eyes to their solutions beyond the pain and suffering that they find themselves in. And, hoping to get through the stigma that men aren't supposed to be dealing with this. We're just supposed to kind of grunt and take it, white knuckle things, work, just plow through it, and it just doesn't work. And I understand where it came from. Maybe it had its place in the time when it came from, but in today's world, I feel like working on ourselves is so huge. So I know I touched a little bit about what got you here in your journey, but can you give us a little more about yourself and how you've landed right here in your journey?
So I'll try to give you the short version. The first thing I want to say, and I think this is kind of a funny way to start, is my girlfriend. So I started doing therapy in my 30s. It was probably a year, 2 years ago now. My therapist's name is Carol. She does internal family systems, and it's been unbelievable. I remember my girlfriend, she's been doing therapy since she was 12, and not from a I'm broken and need fixing perspective, but from a I work on myself consistently, and I now have therapeutic work that helps me do that. And I had dozens of coaches and mentors, and I often joke and I say, if you want a coach, you probably need a therapist. If you want a therapist, you probably need a coach, because success and fulfillment are actually two different things, and they're very challenging to have both together. It took me 30 years to get both together. But the joke that I make that hopefully lands, and I told this to Emilia, my beautiful girlfriend, she was the one who suggested therapy for me, and I'm very grateful that she had me do it, because it's been tremendous. I mean, it really has. Mm-hmm. And I said, guys can't even ask for directions, never mind get a therapist. And so hopefully sure. That was when we were on, Guys Dealing with Feelings, I just thought that would be a good opener.
Yeah, but anyways, so true, right?
Yeah. How dare I ask for help or need any guidance whatsoever, right? I am man, and I am right. Fine by myself. So a little bit of ego in there. But anyways, so 35 years, going to be 36 in November. I say that because I look 15. And it's really good for my business coaching career, right? Guys love to be coached by people who look 15. But anyways, so early on, I was born into adversity. Didn't know it. Didn't understand how rare statistically this childhood was. And I'll give it briefly here. Just the high points, obviously, highlights. Father passed away when I was 2. He was 28. My real last name is McCorkle. So my stepfather came into my life from 3 to 14. So that was an 11-year span. And I took his name around age 7, I think. And my mom said, you can, choose this. I think it was a choice anyways. And so I chose. My last name is Lazaros. And so Lazaros is a very Greek last name. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people who are Greek, they look at me, blonde hair, blue eyes, look 12, not a hair on me, right?
Right.
And they're like, Lazaros? I've gotten that so many times. It's like, no, I'm a McCorkle, Irish cat, Irish, German, Polish, that kind of thing, Scottish. And so my birth father, his name's John McCorkle, and he was a part of a big Irish Catholic family: Jim, Joe, John, Jane, Joan, Jeanette. So he had 5 siblings. So he was not the 6th, but he was one of 6. Passed away. Not sure my family did well at dealing with any of that, quite frankly, and that's the polite way to put it. Stepfather comes in. I playfully refer to that part of my life as boats and BS. And stepdad did well, worked for a company called AGFA, .com bubble, 90s, America, just lots of boats and trips and ski trips and just upper middle class, just .com bubble, everyone doing well in the economy in the 90s. The 90s were wild. Mm-hmm. And stepfather leaves at 14. So he got the yacht and the apartment building. We got the house and the dog, and he took 90% of the income with him. He also took his entire extended family with him. Haven't seen a single one of them since. I've talked to my stepdad a little bit on Facebook Messenger, but I haven't seen him since. And when we were trying to be sort of the Lazaroses, we weren't really associating with the McCorkles anymore. Same year, 14, didn't know any of this until I started doing therapy in my 30s. I kind of rewatched the movie of my own life and went, whoa. 14 years old, stepdad leaves, takes his whole extended family with him. Sister moves out with her older boyfriend. Mother gets in a fight with my Aunt Sandy, her sister, and my Aunt Sandy completely ostracizes us from her side of the family too. So by the time I'm 14 years old, I kid you not, didn't understand this, didn't even know this until way later. Reflecting back on it, I kind of lost 3 families by the time I'm 14. And so in therapy, it's kind of like, so abandonment, scaffolding ripped out from under you. So I had 2 trauma responses. There's 4 trauma responses total. I didn't know the 4th one until way later, my 30s. Fight, flight, those are the ones everyone knows. And then there's freeze and fawn. Fawn is appease. Just don't poke the bear. I was a social coward. I mean, I just did not ever speak up for myself in hindsight. Mm-hmm. But my trauma response when I was alone was fight. It was aim higher, work harder, get smarter. I became this type A super achiever. And I looked into the future, and this wasn't conscious, but I think when my stepdad left, I realized, okay, we are screwed. Mom trades in her BMW for a little Honda Civic. I get free lunch at school now because our income is so low. I go from I can't wait to go to college, my dream school, Worcester Polytechnic Institute, mini MIT, $50,000 a year, to even if I get in, I don't think I could go. But I'm this weird, semi-genius, super driven, super achiever now. And so I get straight A's through all of high school. But I looked at my future and I remember thinking, I'm screwed if I don't do something about this. There's no trust fund. There's no inheritance. There's no dad. Like, I got to be the man of the house, so to speak. So I did. I got straight A's through all of high school. I got what's called the President's Award. It's actually behind me, signed by George W. Bush. You have to get a 95 or above GPA for every report card all through high school. 4 report cards, 4 years, 16 report cards straight. And I got fortunately, I got tons of scholarships and financial aid. I was at the award ceremony, just the obnoxious kid who never sat down type of thing. And I was also such a loser too in my freshman year of high school. So that helped because it just kept me driven. I still haven't hit puberty, so imagine me in high school, right? So anyways, fast forward, go to college, computer engineering, master's in business. I had 2 trajectories. I now realize this is weird. Didn't know it at the time because I've always had high self-belief. Don't understand fully where that came from. We can talk about it. But ultimately, it was lawyer, politician, president, or it was going to be engineer, MBA, Fortune 50 CEO, like my hero at the time, Steve Jobs. I used to argue Bill Gates and Steve Jobs with my friend Kiki. We used to argue who was smarter, right? Mm-hmm. And in hindsight, I realized all that's weird. But at the time, it just seemed normal because I didn't know any different. End up going into corporate. And this is when I, computer engineer, MBA combination, on my way to Fortune 50 CEO, like my hero, Steve Jobs. I job hopped. I worked for a bunch of tech companies. iRobot, Sensata Technologies, Lens Americas, Simplex Grinnell, Tyco Safety Products, which is actually technically Simplex Grinnell, a little company called Oz Development, job hop, soul search, type A, super achiever, paid off $84,000 worth of debt in a single year, $150,000 in an investment account for Vanguard, no kids, no mortgage. My rent is split $500 a month with my girlfriend at the time, Courtney. We live on a little lake. and I'm just crushing it in my career, but I have high school friends and college friends and corporate friends, and I was drinking too much and too often. And that's the part of the story that I don't know how to articulate, which is just, I just grew up where alcohol was prevalent. Mm-hmm. It was just it makes me so angry how prevalent it was. And did I choose that, or did I grow up in it, or did I know any different? And my mom and stepdad were partiers, and that's a polite way to put it. They loved their partying. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't know any different. And so I brought that into my world. I worked for a company called Cognex. Their motto was work hard, play hard. And I used to say work hard, play harder. So I'm this super successful, semi-genius, intelligent, gets to party all night, still gets straight A's on the calc exams, doesn't even go to class type of kid who, is really driven and achievement-oriented, but not working on the inner part. And then I get in my car accident. I'm 26 years old. I'm up in New Hampshire. And we were playing Call of Duty, not drinking or anything. My little cousin, the only cousin who ever came back from my mother's side to this day, his name's Jeff, his son, my second cousin, Dan, is with me in the car. Driving to TGI Friday night, not drinking and partying. I look down at the GPS, I look up, dark winter night back in 2015, the snowbanks are covering the yield signs, and I'm supposed to yield, I don't. I end up on the wrong side of the road, and I look up in front of me, and I saw what I thought was a Mack truck. Two things saved my life. Number one, it was not a Mack truck, fortunately, because if it was, there's no chance I'd be here. It was a lift-kitted pickup truck. It's actually a pretty light one, too, luckily. Number two, I'm driving a 2004 Volkswagen Passat that I bought in $5,000 cash because all I cared about was getting wealthy. I just thought, okay, money is gone, stepdad leaves, money will save family, right? And so I just invested all my money in a bunch of tech companies that I knew would win. And again, I know is like in quotes because no one really knows, but they have a high probability of winning. And I now realize that's weird, but I'm just being me. And so I bought the car in cash, Volkswagen Passat. I used to call this car the tank, German engineered, heavy car. Mm-hmm. That car totally saved my life. Totally. If I was in a little Honda Civic or something, no chance I'd be here. I mean, this car, the whole front end was completely crushed, but the frame stayed. And the airbags deployed. Yeah, super safe car, right? I mean, thank you, Volkswagen. And so he hurt his knee on the airbag. I hurt my face on the airbag, but physically we were okay. Mm-hmm. Mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, though, I mean, this is the second chance my dad never got. So this is the quarter life existential crisis of every regret I've ever had, every choice I've ever made. Would he be proud of me? Would I be proud of me? Did I make good choices? Is this really what I wanted? And it sounds like you've had that rock bottom moment too.
Sure.
To probably a greater degree than me in this moment. But it was definitely my quarter life existential, what is the point moment. And the Phoenix burnt down fully. It's called an ego death. And everything I thought about myself and the world and others just burnt down. And I reinvented myself completely. Now, some things have stayed. I think the parts of you that stay the same are the parts of you that are the most true. There's certain things that are still super true. But most of the stuff, in hindsight, this is the best way I can sum it up. I'm sorry for being so long-winded. In hindsight, it's very obvious that I was achievement-oriented. It's very obvious that I was smart. Saying that is actually scary for me because you're not allowed to say that apparently, but whatever. I was obviously improvement-oriented, but it was external. I could improve processes. I could achieve goals. I could achieve jobs, resume, cover letter, professional development for days. But personal development, self-improvement, personal growth, mental health, no, not at all. So I flipped the script. I was successful and deeply unfulfilled. And I flipped the script. I went all the way to deeply fulfilled, happy, healthy, productive, personal growth, self-improvement, living the dream, broke. Mm-hmm. Liquidated all my assets, started my own company, what you'll never learn in school but desperately need to know. I'm a speaker now. Went broke. Now here I am 9 years later since the car accident, about to be 10 years when I turned 36. And now I'm finally in what I think all of us want to be in, which is both successful and fulfilled. And I want my future to be an amplified version of what it already is. Whereas before the car accident, I could not authentically say that.
Yeah, I say that our trauma can be the foundation to our rebuild. And in my book that I'm just finishing up, I talk about if a house is torn down in a tornado or hurricane, whatever it does, it tears it down. We wouldn't just grab all the stuff and put it back together. We would tear it all down all the way, and we would put a new foundation in, and we would rebuild it just the way we wanted it in that time with what we knew then. I use that as I'm a contractor. I've got a contractor's license, and I got into it, after losing Joel, and I got into it. I got my license and all, and it's a huge achievement for me. And then I get into the business, and it's awful. And it's standard operating procedures in that business. And there's no way I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing this. This is crazy. And it didn't matter. I knew then that it doesn't matter that I had achieved a big goal. And, I was getting it had been a couple of years. I was getting the business off the ground. Money was starting to come in, but I pulled the ripcord because I'm not spending any more days unhappy. I can spend days broke, but I don't want to spend them unhappy. And so many people put those two things in the same sentence. I'm broke, therefore I must be unhappy. Mm-hmm. And it's just not true. And if one can find happiness in being whatever they are, then they're not chasing after something that's just an illusion in the money. And I realized you had found it, and you had the trauma kind of kick you. Life will sure give us some punches to wake us up, but we've got to wake up to them. Were you something, before I go on to the next thing I was going to ask you, but were you privy to any type of self-improvement work prior to the accident? Like, I know your mom, you mentioned that your mom and stepdad partied, obviously lost dad at 2, so he really didn't teach you much. So you're kind of devoid of really having family support, but was there anybody in your life, mentors, teachers, anything like that, who mentioned, and I say mental health, but I don't really mean it. I mean self-improvement. Like, we know the difference today, but 10 years ago, it would just been called mental health. I know when Joel died, it was just being called mental health. So how do you respond to that? Like, did you know, so you knew it existed out there, you just hadn't worked on it, you didn't even know people did that stuff? Where were you on that?
Honestly, man, I appreciate the question, and I've been asking myself that for 9 years, almost 10, because this is the duality that I've come to now. First and foremost, there's something called an ACE score, adverse childhood experiences. Mm-hmm. And there's research on this, and it's essentially the higher your ACE score, the higher the probability that you go to an early mortality. And I have an extremely high ACE score, and that's actually probably lessening it, to be honest. Even though a lot of people see me, they see the awards, they see the, Abercrombie model looking thing going on, and they see the nice shirt and all that. And I look like a silver spooner, right? Mm-hmm. Biggest economy in the world, New England, went to one of the top tier engineering schools in the world. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard to, and I'm also very intelligent. So it seems like I was gifted and lucky. Mm-hmm. And I think there's two things that I was really lucky, and I'll answer your original question. One, I was gifted with a really, really powerful brain. For some reason, intelligence, just everything comes fairly easy to me on the success side. Relationships, not at all. But success-wise, I feel like it makes sense. Like the world, the economy, business, science, technology, engineering, all that stuff always just clicked for me. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I got good at stuff pretty quick. So I'll just be honest about that, as vulnerable as that is. So that's an advantage, number one. And number two, I was born in a country that believes in powerful minds and invests in them. So I got financial aid and scholarships. And if it wasn't for that, I definitely wouldn't have gotten here. Right? Going to WPI was the best decision ever of all time. Now, my mom did teach me when I was young, and I've told her this, while I disagree with a lot of what she did or didn't do, as we all do with our parents. I do agree that she crushed it with this one thing. She taught me, she said, Alan, you can be a CEO or you can be a farmer. And this is when I was really young. I had a farmer reach out once and get mad. Farmers work so hard. Listen, this is just her explaining to a 6-year-old. Okay. Right. She said, you can be a CEO or you can be a farmer. I'm going to love you either way. But if you aim high and you go for CEO, you can wake up one day and decide to be a farmer, but it does not work the other way around. And she was right about that. Aim high and you'll have choices. Now, I've come to realize that if you aim high with low self-belief, it will actually crush your self-belief and self-esteem. For me, aiming high always made sense. It still does. shoot for the moon, land amongst the stars. Like that works for people with high self-belief. With people with low self-belief, you're basically just going to crush your self-esteem and self-belief.
Sure.
And that's not a good idea. You should start small and build. To answer your original question about self-improvement, I've thought and rewatched the movie of my life over and over and over again. And I've got a good memory. I don't think there was any exposure to self-improvement. Like to an alarmingly angry, it makes me angry how this is obviously the answer. To me, holistic self-improvement, health, wealth, and love, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health, love, relationships, intimate relationship, family, kids, colleagues, clients, mentors, mentees, therapists, like, and then wealth. How do you make your money? Is it meaningful work? How much do you make? Is it increasing or decreasing based on the 21st century? And where do you invest it? To me, self-improvement, right? I can't change my dad. I can't change my stepdad. I can't change my mom. I can't change my aunts. I can't change my family. I can't change the economy. But I can change me.
Mm-hmm.
And after 26, I locked in on self-improvement and I went, whoa, this is the effing answer. This is what I needed desperately. And I would have, I think, been open to it. I just don't think there was any of that in my environment. I call where I grew up the Boulevard of Broken Dreams, and I know a lot of people from my home that I grew up with would be offended by that, and I honestly don't care because that's just the truth. And maybe I'm weird. Most of the people that I grew up with are still happy in that same mentality, but for me, it's very obvious that a lot of us were going nowhere fast. And I looked around and I saw unfulfilled people who hated their jobs, who lived for the weekends. I saw alcohol, I saw drugs, I saw deeply unfulfilled marriages. Marriage scared the hell out of me.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, you guys don't even like each other, never mind love each other. This looks terrible.
Right.
And so as a kid, I just was people used to come up to me, they say, Alan, these are the best years of your life. I hope not. This is terrible. Right. And I remember thinking, there's no way, maybe for you, sir, but not for me. So I get fired up because the answer is I don't think anyone really exposed me to self-improvement, and it does. It pisses me off.
I get it, and that's why I asked the question, because I know how few, especially males, were talked to about self-improvement, because our self-improvement was defined in how hard we worked, how much we made, how much we were able to provide, etc. And I'm speaking historically as man, not human, but man. You know, that role, that gender had assignments, still has some assignments, and it's okay. That's okay that we have those assignments, but that doesn't make us who we are. And that last part was kind of slow coming for men. And you know, our moms didn't know. I was raised by a single mom, and they didn't focus on that. They didn't focus on teach. They focused on teaching us how to provide. And I mean, what a great lesson, in how true it is, regardless of what the farmer said. And the farmer is a CEO in a way of looking at it, and they're extremely hard workers, as our CEOs. And but one can buy one, and one cannot buy the other. So I appreciate that answer, and it's so true. And the holistic wellness piece, you threw that out there. I agree 100%, and I feel like that's why I say that I was kind of tiptoeing around the words mental health, because what is mental health? It's health. We have health, and it's our whole body. And if it's not our whole body, then we don't have health. And you know, so many of us fail to realize that. And the other thing that you touched on was the boulevard, you know, where dreams go to die, and we don't even know what our dreams are. We don't even know what we want. And that's you know, I talk a lot about emotional identification, and you talk about getting men to run in another direction. You start talking about emotional identification. But hell, how simple is it, speaking logically, how simple is it to say, if you don't understand your emotions, happy being one of them, excitement being another, ecstatic, these types of things, how can you get more of that? You don't even know what the hell it is. How can you find a place? You know, I want to go on vacation, but I'm not going to pick a place I'm going to go, and I'm not going to use a map to get there. I contend you're never going to go. And the same is true with these things. And what I thought the answer used to be was to get home. Well, it was weekend chasing, I guess is the best way to say it, except for my drinking and chilling would stretch beyond the weekends. And, you take care of all the things you're supposed to. So I made the money. My family ate. My family's got a roof over their head. We've all got our vehicles like we're supposed to. What's anybody bitching about? Why is anybody complaining at me? I've done everything. And it's because we're absent in every other meaning of the word of being present. We're only present financially in that. So we're not really providing. So I appreciate you breaking that down. And it's not that those that used to live around necessarily wanted those lives. Those were the lives that they found themselves in and weren't making the changes necessary to change those circumstances. And so, yes, that's, you can cry victim, foul, whatever, until you're made aware that it's on you to change it. And at that point, then you have to look in the mirror. So I'm glad you did find self-improvement. I understand why you didn't. And that's why I asked the question, though. So on to the next thing. And, something that you deal with is creating high performers, working with businesses to excel. And so peak performance is something that you talk a lot about. Could you please define what you mean when you say peak performance, and why is it so important?
The peak performance thing, there's a book called Algorithms to Live By, which is a computer science approach to decision making. And my business partner, Kevin, he came on your show, and he is very different than me. He's taught me so much because I was sort of type A, semi-genius, mathematical, logical, reverse engineer, high belief visionary, optimistic as hell, even though grew up in a tough environment. He was, and I was white collar engineer, MBA, blah, blah, blah. And he was sort of blue collar, job hop, forklift operator, gas station attendant, didn't have a dad either. We realize now we had a common core value of deep conversations and a common core wound of not having a male role model. And we've sort of become the male role models we never had. And ironically, most of our listeners are women. But anyway, so the point is, though, is that he read the book and he comes to me and he goes, and I'm a computer engineer, right? So for me, I've never not thought, there's 4 modalities of thinking, I'll just give them here, that I've uncovered over the years of coaching. So I've been coaching for 7 years and probably 5,000 plus hours of individuals from all over the world. So I uncovered these thinking modalities because I realized that so few people understood me as much as they understood Kevin, even though I thought I was more accurate than him. We would go give speeches together and everyone would love Kev and not like my speech. And I didn't understand because I genuinely thought my speech was more valuable. Now I realize I'm an engineer and the way that I think doesn't land for most people. And I figured out why. So the first modality of thinking is the rarest. And I put it first just because it's mine. Sorry. But it's numbers. It's mathematics. It's logic, rationality, numbers, mathematics. I can chronological time, effort, money. Everything's numbers for me. There's 340 million Americans. There's 38 million Canadians. There's a ton of land in Canada. So, and there's 110 million people in the Philippines with very little land. If you want land, you go to Canada, not the Philippines, right? But you don't go to Canada looking for some huge economy. To me, everything's numbers. You can't make good decisions without numbers, in my opinion. So he reads this book, Computers, Algorithms to Live By, and he says, dude, this is how you think? And I kid you not, I went, oh, you don't? And we had an honest dialogue. Got it. He doesn't think in numbers. He thinks in words and concepts. That's why he's a stronger communicator than me. I'm a stronger communicator to engineers. Okay. So the first modality of thinking is numbers, mathematics. That's the rarest, I think. Number 2 is energy. Most women, not most, but a lot of women think in energy and intuition, and they can feel your energy. So you mentioned when you were sort of not unlocked or not holistic or whatever, you probably had a undertone of a negative energy of emotions that weren't healed and trauma that wasn't healed. And women could pick up on that more than men, right? So that's the energy piece. That's the second rarest, I think. The third is words and concepts. I would say a huge percentage of the population is words and concepts. They just think in words and concepts. Regardless of your language, it's words and concepts. And by the way, words and concepts also construct emotion. Most people are emotion first, logic second. And then the last one is images and pictures, imagination, visionary. So images and pictures. A lot of people think. So those are the 2 common ones, and the 2 rare ones I think are energy and math. Math was my number 1, 2, and 3. I mean, I just always. And that's why success was so easy for me. Reverse engineer the finish line, do the stuff, all good, right? You're not going to be surprised when the chocolate cake comes out well when you have the right recipe. Relationships were always hard for me. It was always so hard for me. Like, I didn't understand. And you're in high school, right? And you're this weird sort of low self-worth, high self-belief, prepubescent engineer mind who's a genius and doesn't know it, dating this like pretty gorgeous young woman. And she says, do I look fat in this? And you say yes at level 6 out of 10. And it's like, whoa, none of that, right? You have to kind of hide that part of you. So I've had to suppress such a big part of me because my brain actually does say that. Statistics. I think in statistics, right? So when you say, do I look beautiful? My brain goes, yes, at level 8 out of 10 or whatever, right? Compared to the world. And that's not how people think. It's like, you're a successful podcaster. Well, compared to who? Mm-hmm. Compared to what? So that's a whole nother thing. So relationships are emotional and vulnerable and energy and humility and courage and feeling and being present. Success, come on, future orientation, discipline, grit, consistency, get after it. Those are very hard to be good at both. But business is about relationships. So you have these type A super achiever intelligent people who can reverse engineer finish lines and have 10 out of 10 mathematical certainty, which creates massive action, which creates belief. But then there's this low self-worth sort of, you have to hide your true self, be inauthentic in order to survive. I did. And you've got these other people who are super good and present and good at relationships and humble, courageous, and vulnerable, who need the successful person to be successful. And then the successful person needs love from the other person. And so it creates this yin and yang situation that can be very toxic if you're not careful. And so to answer your original question, peak performance to me is being righty and lefty, or at very least understand if you're righty. And I think most women, in my opinion, statistically, are much more humble and much more holistic. I didn't know the word vulnerability till I was 29. I didn't even know what it meant. Mm-hmm. And I think that men are these like emotionally stunted. Instead of picking on men, let me just do this. We weren't encouraged. I wasn't encouraged to have a diary. I have a journal now. I journal every day. I reflect on what am I grateful for, and I reflect on my experiences, and I reflect on how I'm feeling. And when I was a kid, my older sister, she had a journal and diary. And I think that's why women mature faster than men, is because there's a lot more self-reflection that's encouraged. There's a lot more self-improvement, I think. I think women are more self-improvement oriented than men. That's my truth. Now, statistically, I believe that to be true. Men, I do think, are very improvement oriented, but usually process and external results. Very rarely is it self-focused. I mean, everyone can think of a man right now who just cannot look at self at all. They just can't. They can improve their car. They can improve their house or houses. They can improve their business. They can improve their processes. They just cannot look at self. And I was one of them for a time, and it's embarrassing.
Yeah, that is crucial. And, being able to look at self, being accountable to self. And I think loving yourself, like looking in the mirror and saying, I love that guy and I'm not going to do anything that derails his happiness, is so massive. And I would say that maybe 1%, I'm pulling that stat out of my butt, but 1% of men could do that without a bunch of therapy and work on self. And it's like you said, it's not encouraged, it's not taught. Through the systems in which we're raised, through the attitude of the people who are raising us, the mentors we have, all of those things. Again, gender assignment got that caught in the wash, and we're now realizing we need to identify so that we can operate at our fullest. And you touched on it, and I love that, because it's the opposite of weakness. It's the opposite of being a weenie or a wuss. It takes extreme strength to be vulnerable to yourself, and it takes a lot of hard work to go through it. And then once you've done it, you've unlocked these parts of yourself that you didn't even have before. So you're going to way outperform the old you. Yep. In what, Aaron? In anything. That's what. In absolutely anything you're going to outperform, because now you know how to look in the mirror and say, hey, you could have done better at that. if you'd have paid attention, if you'd have listened to that person, or you'd have listened to that person, or you'd have gotten out of your own damn way, you could have done better. And anyway, so I go on about that because I'm trying to get through that. It's not going to make you weaker. It's going to make you stronger. So what's a way that you could tell somebody, give a listener an idea of how they could practice doing this, how a tool they could get or a process they could use that could get them on a road to doing this?
I have a framework that I call the triad of transformation. And back in engineering school, I took a fire protection course, which was really cool. And there's the fire triangle. In order to create fire, so picture fire in the center, there you need heat, fuel, and oxygen. And so I kind of took that as a metaphor. In order to make transformation, you need humility, courage, and vulnerability. Humility, and that's why the car accident transformed me. Before that, I wasn't humble enough. I wasn't courageous enough. I wasn't vulnerable enough. So the car accident humbled me to the rock bottom of looking at myself, looking at my choices, looking at my friend group. I mean, whoa, talk about an L. And here's the problem, right? You do not know how toxic being a man can be until you're in a fantasy football group of men. I mean, you just can't go near vulnerability with a 10-foot pole. It's comical how bad it is. And for the women out there listening, it's worse than you think, because when you're there, men are different. Okay? So the point is, and again, I'm not trying to pick on men. I'm just trying to get the truth out.
Sure.
The truth of the matter is, when you're a kid and you're a guy and you show any form of vulnerability whatsoever, you get called a PUSSY, you get called a BITCH. It's so brutal. It's so brutal. I was a cart kid and a busboy at a golf course. And I look young now. I was 15, 16 years old. And there's nothing more toxic than a golf course of men.
Sure.
And it was just, I mean, you want to talk about just ego bonking all the time. And I now realize that one of the reasons why I struggled with vulnerability is because anytime you show a lick of vulnerability or emotion as a man, you pretty much get ripped a new one. And so you just get conditioned to, nope, I'm not showing a lick of weakness ever. And then there's the media that reinforces that. And I'll share this briefly. I remember I was at my Uncle Joe's funeral, Jim, Joe, John, Jane, Joan, Jeanette. And so my Aunt Joanne gave a speech, and it was in the same church as my father. So my father's funeral was in the same church. So this is kind of same cemetery. So my Uncle Joe is being buried next to my dad, same cemetery. And so I'm in this church. I bring my girlfriend Emilia. I remember as a kid going into this church, and I would jump up and grab the bell and, pull it down, and it was this big bell, and now it was like this tiny little bell, right? And now I'm 6'2", 200 pounds, and I'm in the same church, but I'm a new man. I'm a different person. We go to my Uncle Joe's funeral, and my whole family is there, on my birth father's side, and this is kind of like my father's funeral 2.0. So for me, I'm super emotional, crying quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this interesting moment because everyone in my family is trying to keep it together. They literally say, just keep it together. Everyone's got tissues. Everyone's trying not to cry. And I remember I had this really powerful moment. Why are we trying to keep it together?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if there's ever a time to feel your emotions, this is it.
Right.
And I had this really powerful moment. I'm sitting there crying pretty intensely. And I said, I'm the most upset right now and the least burdened. Because at this point, I'm in my I think I was 34 at the time. I had done a lot of the emotional work at this point. Therapy, breath work, learned a ton about trauma, internal family systems, cognitive behavioral therapy, all this stuff. Coaching, just feeling all the stuff from my past, facing my past, all that. And so I had that moment of, why are we trying to keep it together? I'm the most upset, and I look the most upset, but I'm actually the least burdened.
Mm-hmm.
And then we put his ashes in the same graveyard as my father, and I went and I saw my dad's grave, and I wept again, and it was really powerful, not bad. It wasn't bad. It hurt, but not bad hurt. And I remember a few weeks later, my mom said, wow, that you really had a harder time than I thought. Are you okay? And I remember thinking to myself, I'm great. Like I'm actually better than I've ever been, I think. Why do we associate me crying as you must not be okay? When in reality, I think a lot of my family is not okay and bottling it all up. And if you read a book like Body Keeps the Score, or these other books about how much we store trauma in the body, and if you study trauma, my girlfriend's in a trauma course right now, and I learned through her. I probably should be in the course myself, but you realize that you're just holding on to so much stuff. And for me, certain movies do it for me, and I weep. You got to get it out. You got to get it out.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a man, especially, you got to get it out. And a lot of people grow up their entire life and they never see their father cry. My stepdad only cried once in 13 years, and it was at his mother's funeral, and I never even saw it. And so that's just being modeled over and over and over again. And I've now coached hundreds of people at this point, and it's not uncommon for people to go their entire life never having seen their father cry.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And Kevin and I have cried dozens of times on our own podcast publicly, right? But we didn't start there. I mean, obviously, in the beginning, we were still trying to put on a show.
Still stoic.
Yeah, we're still stoic.
Still super stoic. Now,
yeah,
now you're just weeping together on your podcast.
Yeah.
Well, how great of an analogy, putting out there about going to your uncle's funeral, which again was like going back to your dad's funeral, because at 2 you really didn't get to express any emotion. You're 2, you didn't know what the hell was going on. So I see you revisiting that in that release, and as you were talking about the weeping, I was like, boy, he was really letting it out. And that's exactly, and then you mentioned Body Keeps the Score. It's so true. Awaken the Tiger Within, and these books are detail in a lot of detail with some science with it, how we trap these emotions inside our body, and they are going to come out. So the people who are at that funeral not crying, it's coming out of them, and it doesn't come out in a good way. It never does. It doesn't come out at a good time. It doesn't come out in a good way. Oftentimes we don't even know what the hell it is. We're trying to figure out, why am I sick? What is going on? No doctor can tell me anything. And it's this trauma that you refuse to cry when you're at a funeral. And I think that is such a great analogy. Like, why the one crying? Am I being the one that's looked at? It's all you at the funeral not crying that should be looked at. What the hell's wrong with y'all? We got to cry.
That was so interesting for me, brother, because that was the first time I had experienced, because you can intellectually think that, but when you're there experiencing it, it's everyone here is trying to keep it together. Yeah. Why? This is the time.
Right.
This is the time to feel. Why not feel it? Emilia and I, we watch movies, and there's certain movies that just get me, right? And one time she made a joke during a sad scene. I said, sweetheart, I've waited the whole movie for this. Please, let's feel this. Please don't do. I want to cry right now. I want to feel this. And the reason why is because I think life is, all right, I'll go quick with this, but I think we're all in sort of 2 camps. And I've never probably been able to sufficiently explain this, but I think some people grow up in an environment where they think life is supposed to be good, and maybe life is good, particularly my generation and Gen Z. And they have this belief that life is supposed to be good. So every time it's not, they think something's wrong with them or something's wrong with the world. I didn't have that. And luckily Kevin didn't either, because I told him there's no way. We were cleaning out the studio. We had an in-person studio for a while, and now we work from home. But I remember I said to him, dude, if you were spoiled, I would never be able to work with you. Because we've worked 6 days a week, every week for 7 years. I'm not kidding. He took 1 vacation. I took 1 vacation. We both worked the whole time. And that's just our choice. Okay. So we're not getting pity or anything. But I said, if you were spoiled, dude, there's no way this would work. I want massive rewards for minimal effort. Okay. Well, take care. But anyways, so I grew up in an environment where it was pretty terrible. So I have this belief that life is kind of terrible, and it's a lot of suffering, and it's a lot of adversity, and it's a lot of challenge. But despite that, you can make it meaningful, you can make it fulfilling, and you can make it worth it. And so I think that's kind of a interesting thing for everyone to kind of dissect, because all of this is subconscious and unconscious. I thought it was a disadvantage. I thought I had a disadvantage by having lost 3 families by the time I'm 14 and all this adversity. It turns out it gave me a ground level of, listen, life is hard by default. Every day that isn't hard, you should be grateful as hell. And when life gets hard, I don't start questioning, why me?
Mm-hmm.
Why is life so hard? For me, it's like, listen, you think some marathon's going to take me down? We're good. Like, I can suffer because I suffered so much.
Right.
And when you can go through adversity by choice, if you can go through pain by choice, if you can work hard by choice, if you can have grit by choice and feel your emotions and heal the traumas, your adversity can be your advantage, but only if, number one, you have self-belief, because if not, adversity is just adversity. Number two, you feel your feelings and don't bottle them up, which I definitely am guilty of, or drink them away, also
Mm-hmm.
guilty of. And three, actually have a bigger, better, brighter future that you're constructively working toward. But what I've come to realize, and this is through having dated people in my 20s, I would date the one person in particular. I'll talk high level anonymously. I had this moment of, you're in some trouble because your childhood was so good that even a little breeze knocks you down, and you immediately go into this victim mode of something's wrong, and something's wrong with the world, or something's wrong with me. It's no, this is just supposed to be hard. You
Right.
started a YouTube channel, you're not going to succeed with 6 videos. Like, what are we doing here? I'm 1800 episodes in, still like, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, let's grind it out.
Right.
And so ultimately, if you're out there and you feel like you're on the bucket where life was really hard, you actually might have an advantage that maybe you've been undersold on, as long as you actually face the trauma. And I think breath work for me was the most powerful thing I've ever done, because that's what really released a lot of it.
Yeah, and that, the release is key. I think that the when I got the physiology involved, so I started working out. I hate working out, and I'm not great. I'm not great at it. I don't do a ton. I just started with walking, and I still find, I start every morning out with a 3 mile walk. It's not even considered exercise at this point. That's just a nature walk where my girlfriend and I go out and we take the dog on a nice long walk in the nice park here by the house. And it's amazing because we get all that humility of how amazing it is that we get to be part of all this awesome stuff. But just the simple things, the trees and how they're communicating with one another, and the water and the animals that are hunting one another and trying not to be hunted and all that stuff. I mean, all of that. And I didn't used to pay, I always liked to go camping when I was younger, but I didn't understand why. I thought it was just a good change of scenery to drink in. And now I realize that being out in nature is just healing. And
Yeah,
it's
it's the
so,
best.
so healing. And we
Soul
don't even,
filling.
yeah, you don't even have to pay attention to it. It's that healing. And so
Yeah,
if you
it's
can
unreal.
pay attention to it and you can kind of add that peak performance you were discussing, where you're looking at self and you're integrating the things around you, so powerful. And I want people to feel encouraged that they're not alone in their feelings of being stuck, or feelings of lack of fulfillment, or feelings of not being happy, and that they're not alone in wanting to deal with those things and not knowing what the hell to do because nobody's ever showed them because they're a dude. All of these things, you're not alone. None of us are alone. All of us deal with this hard, like you said. We're all going to have a bunch of hard stuff hit us. It's how we react or respond, preferably, to these things, and then what we take from them. We take, I lost my son in a tragic accident. It's the worst thing that could ever happen. And so I'm going to be sad the rest of my life. Or it was something that was really hard, but the fact that I've made it through it and I'm to the other side, I know there's nothing that I can't handle. There's two easy ways to look at this thing. And if I look at it the latter way, then I know, bring on challenges, because I know that that's just another learning moment, and I'm going to become a better dude because I went through it. And like you say, I'm going to outperform the other guy who doesn't go through these hardships because they haven't truly been tested. So they're going to be tested in this marathon or in this project we're working on together, or whatever the hell it is. They're going to be tested in that. And I'm not. I'm just going to be doing my thing, because I was tested when I almost got killed in a car wreck, or when my son died, or my dad died at a young age. So I appreciate your view on all of that. I think it's great to hear another viewpoint all the time. I'm appreciative when I meet men who've found fiscal success And then we're able to learn that that didn't mean anything because they weren't happy. And when we lay on our deathbeds, we don't think, I wish I had more money. We think, I wish I was happier and had more time. And, it's so hard for people who haven't suffered a trauma to really grasp that mortality. I think that we get. You definitely had a brush with mortality, and my son dying in such a rapid way. I left for work. He was alive, noon, 1 o'clock, something like that. I get a phone call, and now he's gone. And it's just like, bam, how fast it can be over. And that is so, you got to stop and smell the roses. I get it. You and Kevin are big workers, and that's your roses. Like, we're going to get in here and grind this thing out. That's our roses. And I've
Well, it's
found,
meaningful work, right? It's
yes,
meaningful, fulfilling work. It's not
right.
not all of it, obviously, right?
Yeah.
But it's meaningful, fulfilling work that I know I won't regret.
Right.
It's in alignment with my calling. It's what I'm here to do. Whereas before, it was grinding toward goals that weren't that meaningful.
Yeah. Just about money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it's healing. It heals us. It heals our wounds to be trying to help others and doing our best to be a positive force in the world. Just trying to be that way brings positive back to us, and it gives us more, like you say, more meaning, more purpose, more fulfillment. And so anyway, I'm appreciative of all that you've shared with us today. And at this point, I'm going to be sharing the link to your website. Your website is nextleveluniverse.com.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a /business-consulting/ that I'll be putting on the description part of this episode. So I'd like for you to, it takes us to your business coach landing page, but I'd like you to tell us what we're finding when we get there, and anything else about you that you'd like for us to know, including your social media handles, any projects that you guys are currently working on, or you're about to plan working on that we can keep our eye out for, things like that.
So I currently have, and I'm very grateful for this, because in the beginning it was crickets. In the beginning it was brutal. So I actually just got my 30th client on my roster currently. So I'm currently coaching 30 individuals.
Wow.
Some of those are couples. My girlfriend and I coach couples, called Relationship Talks Coaching. We have a podcast called the Conscious Couples Podcast. And then most of them are business coaching clients. I do monthly, I do biweekly, and I do weekly, depending on your run rate, grow, scale, monetize your business online, turn your passion into purpose for a profit. Again, all of those sound like fortune cookie phrases. Ultimately, what it is align who you really are with your business goals, and make sure your business is aligned with what actually fulfills you, and make sure this is the work that you're uniquely suited to do, that the world actually will pay you for.
Right.
That's the best way to describe it. And it's unique to everybody. I mean, you don't have to want to be a billionaire. You don't have to do any of that. I mean, I have everywhere from, hey, I want to start a YouTube channel at 16 years old to 63 years old. I've been in business for 20 years and I already a multimillionaire and I want to scale. And all different walks of life, all different countries, all different backgrounds. So it's my favorite work in the world. We take your big dreams, break them down into annual goals, break them down into quarterly milestones, and then we break them down into daily metrics and inch pebbles. Inch pebbles lead to milestones, milestones lead to goals, goals lead to your dreams. And it's kind of a metaphorical mountain that gets higher as you climb it. Ultimately, it is success and business coaching, but fulfillment is a byproduct of aligning it with who you really are.
Right.
And so there's a lot of self-awareness in there too. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. Nextleveluniverse.com is the website. Next Level University, spelled just like it sounds, is the podcast. 1% improvement in your pocket every day. And if you Google my name, you'll find all my stuff too.
Okay, great. Man, thank you so much for being here today, Alan, and thank you for everything that you've shared with us. I encourage everybody to go out and check y'all's stuff out. Give your site a look, listen to your podcast. You guys are a very, very strong positive force out there, and I'm very appreciative for that. It takes an army to do all this, and it's not gonna be one of us that does it. It's gonna take a whole bunch of us. So very appreciative you guys are out there doing it with the attitude you're doing it. Clearly successful, you're clearly healthy, you clearly feel good. It's just great to hear both you and Kevin speak, because of the passion that you have, the hardships that you've been able to overcome, how you deal with adversity. All those things are just so awesome. I'm so appreciative you were here. For those of you listening, we're so appreciative that you gave us your time, knowing that your most valuable asset, and we hope that we brought some value to your day. And until next time, I hope you have a great day.
Thank you.